Hello, my name is Keith, and this is a series of videos about healthy living. If you like these videos, please click like and subscribe on my YouTube channels. They are Agency Reviews, Build Your Success, Get Healthy Now, In the World, and KGH Photos and Videos. This video was created during the Mayor's Fitness Challenge where communities competed against each other to be deemed the most fit city. They would get this mobile trophy that would travel from one city to the next, whoever won for that year. Each week we included a video to provide health education during the challenge. This particular one is titled Healthy Habits Make Them Stick.
Housekeeping things. So again, thank you for joining us today for Healthy Habits Making Them Stick. So a little bit about me. My name is Angelica Keene, and I work for the University of Florida IFAS Extension Office as their community development agent. And my background is in psychology, and so for the past 12 years, I've had a really great opportunity to work within the behavioral industry. So whether that be in the health and wellness field or in the medical field, but looking at how do people behave? Why do they behave the way they do? And how that affects our success rates in the changes we would like to make. So that when they asked me, the leadership team of the Health First Mayor's Fitness Challenge asked me to put together a presentation, I thought this would be a great opportunity to take some of the information that I've gathered over my many years of experience and kind of put it into a user-friendly guide. So some learning objectives we have for today, because in all things university, we like to break those down. So we want to define for you, what is a habit? Why are they important? How do they have an impact on our overarching health? With that, we want to identify what are healthy behaviors. How do we know what we're doing is moving us towards the goal we want or not? Now, to have any successful strategy, you have to understand a little background information. So that's why we're going to spend some time today talking about what we refer to as the habit loop. And then finally, we're going to get to the meat of why you guys are here, and that is understanding the strategies and tips and kind of structure into implementing that new successful change. So if you're like most people started out January, especially 2021, with a new desire, a goal, an entry, an opportunity to make things better in some way, shape, or form. Statistically, most people don't stick to it when they make their January New Year's resolution, but that's not to say that you can't stick to a new habit that you're trying to create, and that's what the lesson is about today. So what is a habit? According to psychology, a habit is anything we do automatically. So the idea is that habits are things we do without even thinking. So it's a contextual prompt that automatically causes a behavior, a reaction, an opportunity. And we'll get more into exactly what that means. So when you think about what you do every single day, more than 40% of your actions you take daily are not decisions. You may think they are. You may be aware of them or opportunity there, but they're not actual conscious. You had to break it down and think. So what I mean by that is, think about your morning routine. What do you do first? Do you hop in the shower? Do you check emails? Do you grab a donut off your counter? Another really good one that a lot of people use that kind of brings to the point of the habit is, how do you tie your shoe? Do you tie your left shoe before your right, or your right shoe before your left? Next time you're tying your shoe, I want you to just tie your shoe and then pause and realize, are you using your left or your right foot? And whichever one that is created not because of you made that decision to tie that shoe, but that's a prime example of a habit that you learned very early on that is ingrained in you. So things like, do you choose to have a salad or a burger at lunch? Have you ever noticed that when you're out with friends, sometimes those choices change? When you get home, do you put your sneakers on to go for the run? Do you eat dinner in front of your TV? All of these things are built into your day. And although you feel like you're making well-considered decisions. Most of them are not. Most of them are habits. This means our daily habits can either support or hinder our desire for a healthy lifestyle, which is why I feel most people are here to join the Health First Mayor's Fitness Challenge. Understanding this, what a habit is, that it's a behavior done automatically, and that it either moves you forward or into that healthy lifestyle or away, is why it's so important to kind of understand why we're talking about habits and how we want to change them. So let's talk healthy behaviors before we break down habits. So healthy behaviors, according to a London Journal of Forensic Psychology, a healthy behavior is an action to maintain, attain, or regain health to prevent injury. Now, you've heard a lot of different perceptions and a lot of different people provide their input on what they consider healthy. You hear different media points and various throughout all the time. But for today's purposes, we want to define healthy behavior just as I did, that it's an action that either maintains, attains, or regains, meaning that you're either staying the same, you're moving forward, or maybe you had a surgical setback or a health injury or whatever that may be, and you're moving back into the idea of preventing that illness. That's the structure we want to think about. Now, most experts agree that when you think about your overall holistic well-being, there are 5 common pillars, and those are mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, physical health, and social. Now, to learn more specifically about healthy well-being, please join back. We have a presentation on that coming up at the end of March that I will be presenting on and getting more into that. But for today, this visual, I liked this visual and I selected this one because it shows those categories, and I'll explain in just a minute, but it lists behaviors, and behaviors are what we need to make those habits. So when you're thinking in the word of spiritual or self here, that's going to categorize your mental health, your emotional health, or your spiritual health. And that's a lot of, like I said, want to know more about that, join us later. But your physical, I really picked this one because your physical, you have movement, which is the actual exercise we want you guys tracking and doing. Your stillness, how is your sleep? How quickly do you recover? And then your nutrition. What are you eating? How much water? How often are you going to the bathroom? All of those important aspects. And then your final category is the social, and that's that community component. That's the idea behind why we designed the Health First Mayor's Fitness Challenge in the first place. We wanted people to have a sense of community and camaraderie as they developed these opportunities to better themselves and attain that good health and prevent illness. So let's talk a little bit about the habit loop. So we know why we want to look at our behaviors. How do we get our behaviors, things that we consciously choose, into a habit? And there is a lot of support that says it kind of becomes a loop in 3 parts. So you have your cues, which your cues are nothing more than a trigger that tells your brain to work into an automatic mode. These triggers can be internal or external. For example, when you're around your running buddies and they want to go running, it's easier for you to do it, okay? Your routine, the second part of the loop, is the routine, and that's the actual behavior. Could be physical, such as eating a banana, or cognitive, trying to remember things for the test, or emotional. How do you feel about a situation? How did you feel after that presentation or that activity? The third part is the reward. And not surprisingly, the award can also be physical, cognitive, and emotional. So for example, physical, sugar. A reward is a sugar. I know you guys have heard that before, that the body responds to sugar in that positive. Could also be monies, trophies. Example of cognitive rewards could be finding a subject interesting, being fascinated and wanting to learn more. And emotional is that other side, just like we talked about, I feel anxious. A positive is I feel relaxed. So the opposite perspective of that emotional. Now, The idea behind the reward is very important to understand if you try a behavior for the first time, if you ever are going to do it again. So an example I like to share is how many of you guys as a kid were told to eat your vegetables? I'm sure everybody was at some point. So they were asked to eat their vegetables, and depending on whether or not you liked them, you tried them again and again. So for me personally, I remember when I was a kid, my mom would tell me, eat your vegetables. So that was an external cue. My mother was prompting me to do something. The routine was I would then try 2 bites because that was the rule of my house. I had to do 2 bites. I remember specifically this one time I was trying Brussels sprouts. So she cued me, eat your vegetables. The routine was I tried 2 bites. The reward was I hated them. I absolutely hated Brussels sprouts. And I swore I would never eat them again as long as I lived. So for most of my life, I never did, because that's generally what happens. If the reward comes out to be not worth it, we're never going to try that activity again. Brussels sprouts being that example. So fast forward a few years, I got married and realized I had to learn to cook for myself. So I joined a cooking class. And throughout this cooking class, we had tried all these different delicious dishes. And we came to a recipe and they were using a Brussels sprout based salad. And the cue was, of course, the cooking class saying, this is the recipe we're going to make. We're going to make and try this Brussels sprout salad. The routine was, once again, I had to take 2 bites, and I did it this time, even though I knew how much I hated Brussels sprouts, because all the previous recipes had been so good. So I gave it a chance. The reward, what I've learned is, as an adult, I still hate hot, heated Brussels sprouts in any combination. It doesn't matter if you cover them in bacon and cheese. I've tried it all. It's not for me. But what I did realize is that shredded in a salad, I'm perfectly okay with that. So now when I go to things like Publix or different places, I don't avoid the packages that say Brussels sprouts on them because I don't like them. So that, as you can see, that loop determines if I will ever do a behavior again. And this is really important to understand as we continue into thinking, how do we make these different behaviors that we want to do to continue? How do we make them from a behavior, a conscious choice, into a habit, an automatic response? So let's break down. I feel like we've covered reward really well. Let's break down the cue a little bit further. So habit cues, and this is important to understand because this is going to be part of the tips, tricks, and strategies we're going to cover here in a little bit. But your categories for cues can be like a location. So where were you or where are you when that habit is triggered? Time, just like when you wake up in the morning, maybe you always have a cup of yogurt or you always have a cup of coffee. How many of you guys can't feel like you have a functional day without that cup of coffee first thing in the morning? That is one, both a caffeine component, but also that habit because you do it daily. Mood, what do you feel like? And in that example, how many of you guys sit when at night and you're bored and you eat in front of the TV? Okay. You don't even think about it. You get up, you get yourself a snack, and the next thing you know, you finish the entire bag of chips or pretzels or candy or whatever that may be. What are you thinking about when that cue happens? Okay. What are your overall thoughts? Are you tired? Are you not thinking at all? Like, are you aware of that decision or do you feel forced around it? And then think about the people around you. So these are all cues: your location, your time, your mood, your thoughts, your people around you, your immediate preceding actions. So what do you do right before the habit or right after? This all breaks down to help that cycle continue as we just learned. So keeping in mind of that, thinking of another example of going back to that running group. If you're around people that like to run, make healthier food choices, have you ever noticed that you start to make healthier food choices because the cue, the prompt you're picking up from other people is they want to be healthy, and so you're being cued to do that same thing. And then what we want is we want to continue those types of cues, routine, reward, so that it cycles through. So now, the idea of why we're here. So we're giving you a little background information about what is a healthy behavior. We talked a little bit about how the habit loop circles and explains each portion. Now we want to make these behaviors, whatever it is you decide you want to do, into that habit. So how you do that is I've broken it down into 5 simple steps or strategies. So your first is you want to choose what health goal you would like to achieve. And the idea here is, like we talked about in that visual earlier on. Do you want more movement? Do you want better nutrition? Do you want better stillness? The idea of choosing is to pick one. Yes, we want to have healthier overall, but what happens to a lot of people is a lot of people start picking more than one goal at the same time. And then they can't focus on that individual cycle we broke down of cues, routine, and then reward. And that's that repetition we want. So once you decide, so for example, let's say you decide nutrition, okay? Then from there, you want to identify one specific action because nutrition is very broad. So what do you want to do specifically? Do you want to eat more vegetables? Okay. Do you want to consume more water? Do you want to eat less sweets or treats? But pick one specific daily action. And the important thing here is it's something that you can do daily, because that is what's going to eventually move from a behavior to a habit. Okay, so the 3 major points here, and when you're identifying and choosing your behavior, is that you're picking something that 1, you can focus on one at a time, 2, that you know it's not a behavior that you already hate. So going back to my story I told about Brussels sprouts, if I had selected, I decided I want to focus on my nutrition, I identified I'm going to eat more fruits and vegetables, and I put Brussels sprouts on the list, and I continued to hate them. We know now I like them cold, but if I didn't, it's not likely that that behavior is going to turn into a habit because I won't be able to do it daily. That sounds torturous, even with me liking the cold Brussels sprouts, to have to eat them every single day. So pick something that you can do. The third point with identifying is to make sure that you truly believe you can accomplish it. So for example, in water intake, a lot of people want to just grab a gallon and drink a gallon of water, but they can't see themselves honestly drinking that much more water or getting up and going to the bathroom that many times. So maybe starting a little smaller, maybe starting with 70 ounces of water or a half gallon or what, and then building that up, okay? Now, the other strategy here that's really important to break down is the plan. So strategy number 3. So we want to decide what we want to do. We want to identify what daily task is it that's going to get us there. And then we want to plan it out. We want to be very specific so that we can be consistent when that is. So for example, keeping in that nutrition, I want to eat more fruits or vegetables. Maybe you plan every single breakfast to have a banana, incorporate a banana or an apple, okay? Maybe at lunch, you plan to have at least one vegetable on your plate, okay? You want to be very specific, identifying the time, all those cues we talked about, the time, the location, who's gonna be around you, okay? What mood are you gonna be in? What are your thoughts? You want to really plan that out. So what are you gonna do each day? When are you going to do it? The more specific you can be, the more likely you are to repeat that behavior, and repetition is what turns it from a choice to a habit, okay? So the other aspect to think about here is tracking, and there are a lot of opportunities and suggestions for trackers, but we'll get more into that in the next 3 tips, okay? So again, first 3 tips are decide what you want, identify what it is, and then really be specific on those cues. That location, time, mood, thoughts, who are you going to be around, and what are you going to do right before or after. The next tips is make sure that you're capable of completing that action. Okay. And the idea here is that you want to, a good practice here is to share with, maybe it's a friend or a like-minded individual, about what it is. So the action can be done daily. You know the time, you know the location, and now you have that sense of accountability or urgency or opportunity, and you're not just relying on your willpower. Willpower is great to get you started, but as we all know, willpower is sometimes, it's a muscle, just like anything else. You have to work it, and sometimes it just feels like it doesn't want to work. And if it doesn't want to work, it's a struggle unless you've established that overarching routine. Okay. Tip number 5 is to remember it's a process. So most experts believe that it takes about 10 weeks for a behavior to come automatically. So another way to say that is 70 days. 70 days of consistent, repeated behavior before it becomes automatic. Now, that's not to overwhelm you, saying, whoo, 70 days seems like a long time, because it is a process. So the idea is that breaking it down to 1 week at a time, 1 day at a time, maybe even 1 moment at a time. Remember, we talked about that cue has that individual opportunity, okay, that moment. So if you break it down to just that moment, then it becomes measurable, obtainable, and trackable. So again, this is really, in this part, in the remembering, because it takes so long, tracking is a really good way to show that you're making progress overall, because you don't have to be perfect here. A lot of people think that, oh, I have to be absolutely perfect on whatever I want to do for those full 70 days or 10 weeks to make it a habit. That's not true. Slipping up, missing a day every now and again is not going to derail your chances, as long as the majority of the time you're doing it consistently. And that's where those tracker sheets come in. And there are various free tracker sheets. There are websites, there are apps, there's all sorts of different devices that you can use as the tracker once you identify your other areas. Once you've established that, take note of where you are after your 10 weeks. How do you feel about it? Are you still thinking about it? Or is it more automatic? Are you now just consistent in how much water you drink, or how many fruits and vegetables you eat, or how much you run that day, or whatever it is that you decided, how much sleep you get, or mental acuity, or reading, or whatever that may be that you wanted to do. And if it's where you want, congratulations, you have a new habit, and it's time to go back to the beginning of that process and start again. Or you could say, I'm perfect where I'm at, I just want to maintain. So real quick to remind, those 5 action strategies is: first, decide. Number 2, identify. 3, plan and be specific with that plan. 4, complete it. And 5, remember that it's a process. Okay. Understanding these will really guide you. So many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. Thomas Edison. And I chose this quote very specifically because this happens a lot in that habit behavior. They're so close, they haven't seen any progress in a while, and so they give up right before they get to where they want to go. And we don't want you to do that. We want you to use these tips, tricks, and strategies that we talked about today, and understanding the science behind, so that you can really progress whatever behavior you want to, or whatever opportunity you want to turn into that new future habit of